Hello, it's Paul McFadden here, and today I've got Jason Cask who's going to be talking all things leadership because it's one of those skill sets, regardless to wherever you're at in your life, if you're looking to be the best possible version of you, maybe you're in business and you're looking to take your business to the next level. And for me, it's all about how can you start by leading yourself, but then being able to lead others. And Jason has been someone that I've been fortunate enough to know for a long time and call him a friend as well, which is great. And also to have him as my own personal coach too. He's been able to help me develop so much when it comes to my own leadership skills that's helped me personally, but more importantly, been able to influence and support and lead many others. So I'm really looking forward to drilling into this, having a conversation with him, going back to the younger Jason, finding out how and why he decided to come all the way from the Oz, Australia, to come here to, well, it's sunny now, isn't it? Sunny UK here in Scotland. So it'd be good to find out a bit more about his journey on that process into leadership. So, Jason, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Paul.
So, this is going to be exciting because, I love having conversations with you. Anytime that we catch up, it's one of those ones where I can speak for hours,
Yeah, yeah,
because we resonate on a lot of things. And this whole conversation around leadership, because you just can't have enough of it. But
yeah.
before we get into all of that, maybe let's go back to the younger Jason over in Australia, a bit more about your background, and then again, you coming over here to the UK.
Yeah, well, born Sydney, Australia, and grew up in a great place. Sydney is a beautiful city. I'm probably a little biased. I think it's the most beautiful city of all of the Australian cities, but I'm sure I have a lot of other people saying opposite. So I grew up in an area called the Eastern Suburbs, which a lot of people may be familiar with the beach called Bondi. It's probably Australia's most famous beach. And so I was probably a 15-minute drive to Bondi. And then I had two other beaches which we could literally walk to. It was 1 mile, called Coogee and Clovelly. And not so long ago, we went back and I realized I was close to the beach, but I didn't realize I was that close. And it was just one of those reminiscing moments. And so, yeah, grew up in Sydney, Australia, very much a sports head. Australia's, sports mad in a lot of ways. And so everything was for me was sport, academic, not so much growing up as a kid, did cricket, did athletics, did the swimming and rugby league, rugby union, and really ultimately loved my tennis. And so when I was about 12 years of age, my dad, um, without trying to move me in any direction, because as parents, you're taking your kids to different things, and I had all these sports I'm trying to want to move forward in, and I think mom and dad got a little bit, come on, this is a big, big, big time for us as well. Do you think you might want to cut back a little bit on some of your sport? And I just said, you know what, I just want to play tennis. And so dad was a little bit shocked. He said, I didn't ask you to stop anything, just have a think. I said, no, I just really want to play tennis. So this is about 12 years of age, still did the school sport. And then I basically dedicated my whole teenage years to developing my tennis career, which I thought that was going to be the thing I was going to do. So left school at 16, went into full-time training, traveled around Australia playing different tournaments, and then hit about 18 years of age. And then I started to venture over school, out of over to overseas.
Yeah.
So, and it was just a great experience growing through the Australian culture and yeah, doing loads and loads of sporting things. And I guess that's what's helped me to do what I do today.
Yeah, it's amazing what sport does. Like for me, like for my own younger self growing up, getting involved in whether it was football or tennis or badminton
Uh,
was my game when I was younger as well and played in the school team at badminton. But it does so much for a person, doesn't it?
yeah,
Because it gets you having that competitive edge, see what you're capable of and having setbacks and challenges and injuries and how do you overcome them and everything else.
exactly.
Does that, I guess, reflect to why you do a lot with the leadership side of things because of your sporting background?
Oh, without a doubt, sport is a great learning curve. And, my very first rugby union team, I was 7 when I joined the club, and it had this motto, play to win, learn to lose.
Mm,
And I just remember that even to today. There's the whole element, yeah, go for your best, do your best, but you're not always going to win.
Yeah.
But in every loss, you can gain something for the next moment, and so you learn the ups and downs of life um, that you draw on from your previous sporting background, and so life doesn't always win, and so how do you bounce back when life isn't winning? And so I draw a lot on that pressured moments, things you really want to win in, and you look back and you think, no, that was from my sporting days
Yeah.
to stay calm under pressure. And also growing up on the beach, we had to learn how to deal with the surf.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of our culture growing up. If you lived near the beach, you had to read the rips. You had to learn how to work out how to get out of a dumping moment if you got dumped on a wave. And we were always taught by lifesavers, don't panic.
Mm.
And so you're going to pop out of the wave. And so all these sort of mentalities you start to develop, and you realize they actually are good for life in itself.
Yeah. I guess that's a big a big lesson learned when you're not only trying to be the best version of you when you're playing sports, because for me, being competitive, it's like I don't want to do anything unless I'm giving it my all,
Mm.
especially when it's something physical,
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
Especially in recent years where I've taken up jiu-jitsu,
yeah.
and by the way, I'm touching 40. I'm going to be 39 this year, and still, and basically getting into competitions with people half my
Come
age,
on.
and I'm like, oh my god! But you
Yeah.
still have that drive and that motivation to train hard. But of course, as you say there, a lot of life lessons comes in the losses, isn't it? The
Mm.
setbacks.
Yeah.
How can you intelligently improve next time
Mm.
to fix things, and then understand that even the person that you are competing against, they're also improving too, and it's this kind of, as you say, a pressure cooker sometimes in the whole world of sports. And I see that also in business.
Mm.
And this is why I love when, with what you do in terms of your leadership coaching and helping, I know you work with people who have got a sporting
Mm.
background, but it's so transferable into other areas of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a big part of leadership is problem solving. And so, sport, if you've got a competitor that you are competing against, you have a certain amount of time to work out how to beat your opponent.
Yeah.
And sometimes you run out of time. And some days they're just better than you. Some days, you didn't execute the strategy. So it wasn't the strategy itself, but the execution ability wasn't there. Other days you had the wrong strategy. So all these learning things that come about from literally playing sport can be applied to everyday life. And if you begin to work those principles of how do you create a solution to a problem that you're facing,
Yeah.
and you might have a time limit on some of those, but they're all workable, and that's what makes people succeed. Or people get caught up in the problem, and I heard this recently: if you focus on the problem grows. And I just thought it was a
Yeah.
great saying,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, yeah, that's very true. If you don't focus on the solution, the problem will be all consuming. And I think because of my sporting background, that's just given me some insight, I guess, to everyday life. And I take it into parenting, I take it into other leadership contexts that I get to do, and it all benefits. So it's not constantly being in a place where you've got a solution for everything that you are going through. But what you do know, there is a solution. Even if I don't know what it is today,
Yeah.
I'll be able to find something to get through that moment.
Absolutely. There's so many examples of the sporting heroes that we see on TV, and one particular comes to my mind is like your Conor McGregor.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Conor McGregor lost to Nate Diaz in one of his fights, and then you see him on TV in a report, one of the interviews, and he was talking to the reporter, and he just starts rhyming off all the things that he didn't do prior to the fight. We expected just to win. We didn't put the time and energy in. We weren't training for the right person. So he just layered all the things out that wasn't working well for him.
Mm-hmm.
And what the shift was, he turned around and says, "We've changed the coaching team. We've brought in the right people we need to work
Right.
with. I'm honing in on and getting the right answers from the people that I need."
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I see from any high performer,
Mm-hmm.
is that they invest in coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's why I've worked with you for so long, because, sometimes when we have these conversations as someone who wants to do better
Yep.
personally
Mm-hmm.
and have an impact, because leadership's one of those ones where, for myself anyway, I don't think I was ever ready to feel like I was a leader. Do you know that way?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what does leadership actually mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm trying to figure out life myself. And maybe that's the starting point, which it was, in terms of, well, if I can lead myself, then I've got an opportunity and a chance to be able to lead others. And then you start to realize, while I'm becoming a bit of a leader here.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm responsible for people. I need to inspire people. I need to help them progress as well. And then your leadership roles start to evolve from just yourself to many others around you.
Yeah.
And I guess that with your own background in doing that, I guess you can identify where people's at, what they need. And when we have those conversations, that's what I always thought was great. When I left a conversation with you, I just had those specific things that I needed to go and work on for me,
Mm.
as well as what I had to do for those that I was also leading as well.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I do. I love leadership because it shows you something of capability.
Mm,
And as brilliant as people are, and even working with you, you're brilliant in what you do. Um, we all need somebody to pull out a little bit more. And I looked at, in terms of Novak Djokovic or a Roger Federer. Why did they get coaches when they were already number one in the world? And it's because they're looking for a 1%, a 10% increase on their ability. And so those coaches may not be able to play as well as them,
yeah.
but they see something. And that's what I love doing in leadership, is just pointing out there's a little bit more in you. And have you thought about coming from this angle? And so I love the whole thought of everybody needs wingmen. So someone that's kind of looking for your blind spots, looking for things that you can't see. None of us have got a 360 view of life, and having great people in your life at the right time really does put an edge on you to do things and see things that you currently are not. And so that's why, for me, when I look at leadership, I'm looking at what's inside somebody, what's the potential, and can I not poke the bear, but poke the potential
Yeah.
and let them see actually there's way more in me. And so everyone's on a different level, right? So some are starting out on the tops of their careers and want to go even further. Others are starting out. I just want to start learning the whole journey of how to do this. So it doesn't really matter where you start, what it is that you start the journey. And because leadership is all about you putting you in front in life, not to lead people because you're the best, but more of putting you in a mentality that helps you to go, well, I'm not going to be at the back of the pack all the time. I want to be at the front of the pack because I want to be able to see better. And then we maybe have the privilege of helping other people see better as well. So there's so much varsity and life about leadership that if people understand everybody can lead, but maybe sometimes in some seasons of life, people are too broken to lead. So you got to get yourself better. So that's where leading yourself becomes a whole journey in itself. And once you find that traction and that movement forward for you to go forward, then it really opens up for you, because now you start to go to a whole different level. I often encourage every parent who I said, if you don't think you're a leader, you are a leader. You're leading your kids. And that's probably one of the biggest jobs you'll ever do in terms of life. And so learning the principles, learning the skill sets, adjusting it to your context really determines how effective you become at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you came from Australia. What was the shift then from you to come from Australia to be here in the UK?
Yeah, well, um, I had I guess an experience, an encounter that changed my life at 18 years of age, and didn't really have a faith in God per se, but at 18 I had an encounter which changed my life, and so I continued to play my professional tennis and got to do all that. And at 20 years of age, I started to really wrestle about what my purpose in life was, and and I gave my life to tennis, and my parents had invested so much into that as well, and coaches had invested so much into that, and so I was in this massive dilemma on whether I should keep playing tennis or there was something more for me. And it wasn't an easy decision by any means. I had just played the Australian Open, and I got given what they call a wild card.
Mm.
And so that put me into the main draw, the Aussie Open. Um, that a wild card, for those who may not know what it is, it means your performance is good enough, but your ranking's not high enough. And because I was able to win a tournament in Queensland, that gave me the wild card into the Aussie Open. So it was an amazing experience in itself. And then 2 weeks after that, I had actually laid down my tennis, to the shock of, I guess, a bunch of my friends who I grew up with. Um, and from there, I just started to move into what I do now, which is with my Christian faith and pastoring and building a church, and felt a sense that I should come to Scotland, in Glasgow. And, my grandmother was from Dundee. And so we took a step of faith, I guess you'd call it, and launched out here and just started with a handful of people. And we do a lot of pastoring of people and building a church. And from there, I just started to see a common pattern of challenges that people would go through. And so I ended up writing this whole course called I Lead, which is how to lead yourself. And we just put that in a course. And then I started doing that one-on-one with people, and I started doing larger groups with people, and just found that the principles actually work. So that was the whole coming over, was to do that. And from there, the whole leadership side of things has really opened up for us. And at the end of the day, I just love seeing people's potential come out. And so, yeah, it's not Australia, Scotland, but Scotland is beautiful. It's an amazing country. I think where you grow up is you've always got a heart towards. And so I've always got a heart towards Australia. But absolutely love the beauty. People often say to me, how do you cope with the weather?
Yeah.
It's definitely not Australian. And I learned this from a friend of mine. He just said, because he was in London, he said, I just don't look at the weather until it's blue sky. And so I've taken that same approach, because I thought, well, I'm aware of the weather, but I'm really not going to be noticing it until it's blue. Because when I first arrived, the weather people were just saying how it's going to be a miserable day all the time. I thought, I can't live the rest of my life being miserable. And so just little mentalities like that helped me to make some real major adjustments coming over to Scotland. But yeah, we came over not knowing anybody really. And we just started from scratch.
So that's a big change in anyone's life
Yeah.
to make that shift, I guess,
Mm.
from leaving your country
Mm.
and arriving here and then building something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe talk us through that a little bit, because I often think that there's a big risk for a lot of people,
Hmm.
and it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess that's one thing when it comes to leadership, especially leading yourself, is almost in a sense
Hmm.
believing in yourself
Hmm.
and thinking, yeah, it'll work out well in the end.
Yeah.
So kind of walk me through that whole process. You come here, of
Yeah.
course, you've got the weather to battle, but anyway, that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
smallest of things. But it's
Yeah.
just building something,
Mm.
because you've built a phenomenal church,
Mm.
in terms of what you do on that front. But it wasn't like that when you first came here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Well, I guess I had two major, what I would call giants, um, before I left Australia. One of them was the weather, strangely, because I love the sun. My whole tennis career was following the sun, because all the tennis tournaments are in summer in a nation, so you're always living that. Though I had a change and went into pastoring, um, I still enjoyed the sun. And so a friend of mine just sort of, he challenged that pretty quick. What, you're not going to do your purpose because of the weather, you know? And so that one kind of got nailed pretty quickly. The other one was my kids, because at that point we had 3 kids, and I wanted them to grow up in Australia. And so the thought of a change for them, not just for myself, was massive. And I really wrestled with that for quite a while. And then again, I spoke to a great friend of mine who just said, if the purpose is on you, it'll also be on your kids. And that really put me at rest, because I thought, yeah, then this is not about my journey. This is about a journey for us as a family. and we want to bring them on the journey with us, as opposed to dad's doing his thing. And so we've always aimed at making them feel as much a part of it as I'm a part of it. And so, but they were very real, scary moments for us. Um, but at some point, you have to get over those giants, which is all internal, and then allow a belief to kick forward. And that's what happened to me, where I literally had a moment where, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
I would never have left if I didn't get to that point. And yeah, it was totally unknown. And people going, "How are you going to do it?" I just went, "I don't know, but what I do know, it's going to work." And so that belief that it was going to work causes you to see things. You sniff things out, you watch things, you observe things. Where if I was just going with a place of fear and core concerned about the move, it's blinding you to what is possible. So that switch that did take place, though I didn't get there instantly, it was definitely a journey, was the difference. And I would see things that other people wouldn't see. I would see possibility and other people wouldn't see the possibility. And it was all because I had a different mindset and a different way of thinking as I was approaching things. And so I expected good things to open up, and they
Yeah.
did, because I looked for it.
Yeah.
So,
That word you just said there, expectation.
uh,
It's crazy how powerful
mm,
expectations
mhm,
are. You know, it's one of those ones where I've seen it so many times.
mhm,
I've had, situations in my life where people turn around and say things like, anytime I try something new, this happens. And if I do this here, this is happening.
yeah,
And it's like they expect that because they'll say, oh, there's no point in me trying this because anytime I do something like that, this happens.
yes,
And it's just when you start to change your language because
mm,
they're expecting
mhm,
bad things to happen,
yeah,
things that are not great.
yes,
Like it's crazy that, isn't it? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
in some ways, it's just so bizarre how someone can shift their mindset,
yeah,
shift their language,
yes,
change their expectations as in good things happen,
mhm,
and somehow see different opportunities, approach life very
mm,
differently. And I guess you see that a lot, not only in your own experience, but when you work with people as well,
mhm,
because you can catch them because many people don't know that they've got things that's going on in their mindset that's affecting them. That's why they need
yes,
someone to say, let's challenge that belief that you might have.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm a great believer. You follow your words. So your words, they come out of your mouth, and whatever is coming out of your mouth, you walk towards. And so, as simple as I can, I can't. I can moves you. I can't keeps you where you are. And so, but it's far bigger than that. And so, if I was working with someone, we would definitely look at language and go, why do you say it that way? Because it is the expectation of what you're saying actually begins to happen. Always bad things happen to me. Well, you're just a prophet of your own language all the time, and if you can learn to change that language, and then it's not just saying things and magically happens.
Yeah.
It starts the movement. And so the miracle, if you like, is in the movement, or the provision is in the movement. And so, in order for the movement to happen, you've got to start saying it. And that's what leads a person to that next level. Some people can pretend to believe things and say things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about genuine internal. You say it, and you follow what you say. I read a great story of a professional gymnast coach who used to say to his students who were learning the high ropes or something, um, throw your heart over the wall and your body will follow. And that phrase always stuck with me. When fear is gripping you, just throw your heart and your body has to go get your heart. And I just, again, it's the approach to life. You either allow your life to go forward by the things that you're saying, the things that you're believing, or the opposite happens. You'll just sit and watch everybody else go forward and then complain why nothing's going good for you. And yet there's an opportunity to change it. So I work hard on that in my own life. I'm very mindful of language that comes out of what I say. And if I'm working with people, I'm really like a laser on it because I know the effect that it has on people's future, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's really good when you start to see the things and
Mm,
catch those, and then you can help people course
mm,
correct.
mm,
I guess one of the things for leadership for me is leading by example.
mhm.
You know, that way that uh, it doesn't matter what you tell your kids.
Yeah,
Like they're watching. You
yeah,
can tell them to do something, and of course they may listen, right?
mhm,
They may actually do it. But the ones that make the biggest impact is that they watch and observe and see.
yeah,
So if you say something,
mhm,
but your actions are very different, your kids know.
yeah,
It's a funny moment where I was with two of my younger daughters, Ari and Hannah, and we're outside the back garden. We're just about to get into the ice barrel.
mhm,
And I'm saying to the girls, like, if you do things that are difficult, that are challenging, that's going to make you stronger. And that's why I'm going to go in the ice barrel, because if you do, so I'm giving this big passionate speech, trying. Then Arya turns around and goes, well, get in the barrel then.
yeah,
And I'm
exactly.
like, yeah, I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Like, just lead by example.
yeah.
And the reason I share that story and the whole idea of leading by example, and it touches on what you were saying there, something that I observed when I was around you, because you have your kids involved in everything that you do.
Mhm,
So anytime that I came along to church, or where we had our offices that were in the same building at the
mhm,
time, I just saw you around your kids all the time.
mhm,
I saw how you took them along in that journey,
mhm,
how they felt included,
mhm,
how it just seemed like a family affair.
mhm,
And this is before I had kids.
mhm,
And all I could think about was, that's what I want.
mhm,
That is exactly how I imagine me growing up, having the kids being involved, being around, being part of it, because I guess society tells you no, kids get tucked away,
mhm,
you know, be seen, not heard type things, and all of that stuff. And to me, observing and seeing that,
mhm,
it was the exact opposite. I had so much admiration around that. I thought, that's how you lead your kids.
mhm.
You don't lead your kids by not having them included. They need to be around, they need to see, they need to feel like they're part of it all. And
Mm.
I just thought that there was just amazing how you did that with your
Yeah,
your
yeah,
family.
yeah. Well, it's not a perfect road, but that's what I definitely aimed at. Um, is be build an environment. I believe in you got to build the environment. It's if you took the analogy of a garden, you get to shape it, you get to design what it looks like, but you got to stay on it, otherwise weeds grow. And so family to me is like that. You get to design it. It'll grow the way it's going to grow, but you can shape a lot of things. So I've just always had I guess, the principle that we're in this together. They're going to find their own journey. They're going to find their own path. But I wanted to be a present dad. And that's the tension, is because you have something you believe you're meant to be doing or wanting to achieve, which takes a lot of effort and time. But how do you do that without your kids feeling like they're being sacrificed? And I guess, I mean, really have to talk with them to get an honest answer. But I guess, but talking with them, and I have talked with them in different things, is that they've never felt a competition between what I'm doing and who they are. And so if I was trying to help leadership in family life, that's one of the questions I would ask. Is there a competition between the two? And that's a tight tension to walk, because there are times you need to do things, and it is a cost to your family. So I put some principles in place that really help me. Say, for example, I have a principle of always having a day off. It's not a religious reason, it's a health reason. It's a principle for me. And so that day off is family day. And so we grew up always making sure that the kids' Saturday was the day. It didn't have to be a Saturday, but at least one day. And that I wouldn't be giving them my worst, because Saturday sometimes became, um, I always want a rest day. And so I soon realized my kids were getting my worst. So I felt a bit of a challenge internally to go, listen, they can't be getting your worst, they've got to be getting your best. And so I just shifted it so that they got dad's best. And so whether that's going out to a park, whether that's, we're going for a trip somewhere, going out and playing with the ball, you know, I just found that if you just created the time to make them feel valuable, that made a massive difference with a big life or a big world that you're trying to build something great in. And that tension of competition, I think I was able to remove. And I think a lot of parents potentially struggle with that because they go, well, I've got to build this career. How do I do family life? So I give an example of what I would do if I had to prepare a message to speak at. Um, and I hadn't managed to get ready for it during the week. That would never be done on a Saturday. It was my cost, not their cost. So that meant I had to stay up really late after they'd gone to bed, or I got up super early the next day. That's the cost I put on me. So I never wanted them to feel, oh, they're second rate. Dad's got to do this. And I think I managed to do that reasonably well. I don't say I'm perfect at it, but I think I put that in place to help the kids feel that they're valuable and able to lead them with that. So yeah, it's a big part of family life, is the example. So I always wanted to make sure the kids never saw us panic.
Mm.
So we're always trying to live a life that we believe in. There's peace to walk in. Even in the biggest storms, you can still be at peace. And again, so if the kid fell over, I wouldn't react. I would help. And so I always, because I think maybe my parents were like this. They never panicked in moments that were potentially panicable, if you like.
Yeah.
And so that kind of created a calmness in our home at times. And, and I learnt this one, if your kids ever come to you with something that is very personal and they want to open up to you, and even if it's the most shocking news, you've got less than 5 seconds to pull your face expressions back to normal. Because even if you pull a funny face or you say something in that personal moment, they're never coming back to you again with a personal moment. And so these are all the things I think you prepare is a big word. How you prepare for life and how you prepare for parenting. And if you're able to manage that, then I think when the time comes, you're able to then approach it in a certain way. So the example thing's really big.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but preparation is a big part of it.
Yeah. Now, I love what you're saying here. I mean, I guess as a father myself, it's one of those, uh, it's a challenge, isn't it? We're all trying to figure this parenting out. And it's interesting because, in one way, I get a lot of compliments from people on how we bring up our girls. But sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like, thanks for the compliment because I could do with it right now
Yeah.
because the challenges you're sometimes going through as a parent
Mm.
and you're having to try and keep it all together, especially to create that family bond, but at the same time allowing the family to be able to open up
Mm.
and have those conversations with you. Not having a father around for myself, it's one of those ones where, for me, especially having three young daughters, I know how important it is to be an example for them because I remember reading a book. It was actually had a lot of Christian principles in it. Strong fathers, strong daughters,
Right.
and probably one of the best books I've ever read.
Mhm.
And the premise behind it is that this is for the fathers that have daughters,
Mhm.
and that is that because your girls spend the best part of almost 18 plus years with you,
Mhm.
they're going to end up looking for a man that's like their father
Mhm.
because of the length of time that they've spent with you.
Mhm.
So they're watching and seeing how you interact and engage with them, how you interact and engage with their mother,
Mhm.
with other people,
Mhm.
the things that you say and
Mhm.
follow up with, or the things that you say and don't. Like, they're observing, they're watching, they see it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And later on in life, depending on what they've been watching, what they've been seeing, that's why you can look at how many people end up getting into relationships and it's a reflection to what they're trying to get from their dad.
Yeah.
Maybe they never got love from their dad and they're trying to get it from someone else and get themselves into some awkward relationship. Like there's a lot of that you can track back. And the principles around the book, as the fathers reading this, is to lead by example and to not only be there to care for your kids,
Mm.
but also to allow them to fall,
Mhm.
to make some mistakes, to
Yeah.
figure things out themselves. You're always going to be there for them.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's a balancing act between, myself and my kids, because you've got to push them a little bit, don't
Mhm.
you?
Yeah, yeah.
Like when they're starting on a bike, isn't it, to learn how to cycle?
Yeah.
And they're going to fall
Yeah.
numerous times. The amount of scratches they've hurt themselves, the cuts, you name it. But if you're always just trying to jump in there and stop anything and wrapping them in, cotton wool, or baby wrap, then in one way it's actually having a knock-on effect that it might not be the right thing that you want to instill into your kids.
Yeah. And that is so true with maybe this generation that is so protective.
Yeah.
And some parts of that's really good, right? But there's other parts, mistakes have to be made in order for the lessons to be learned. Now, what you don't want is them making major mistakes.
Yeah.
But there are things that actually are beneficial. So when for example, when you're watching your kids learning how to walk, you kind of let them, long as it's safe, have a fall, have a spill, because that's part of them learning how to create the balance, what's needed for another step, and that runs all the way through life. I don't believe in the principle where you should make it harder for your kids. I believe that they should jump on your shoulders with the ground that you've cut open, but they take it more forward. They'll have their own battles and things that they have to work through. But if we do it right, I think another generation can do better than what we did. And it doesn't mean they do what we do. It just means they take it further. And so if we can give them the right principles and let them see, as a dad, dad was gutsy. He had a go. And that sort of example of them seeing those steps of belief, and they think, well, dad did it, maybe we could do it. They're going to have to do it themselves, so you can't do it for them. But I think that all encourages them and builds an environment. So again, you look at environment, it produces something. And so if you can do that in your family life, and you can learn what these environments work and what environments don't work, you can really make some major changes and some major shifts. Though they don't change quickly, they absolutely do work. And, you see that in nations, why nations keep producing great sports people, because there's a culture, there's an environment for it. And there are nations that continually struggle. Well, there's an environment for that. So if we want something to change, then we change the environment accordingly. So I think parenting is a bit of that, is going, what are the principles that we can help our kids be tougher, because life is going to whack them, and what are the tools you need to cope when life is tough. And you don't have to panic. You don't have to fall over. It doesn't mean it's easy, but you give them the tools to work with, so they can handle anything that's in front of them. So it's a journey, though.
Absolutely.
A journey.
This whole conversation around your environment, like that's probably had the biggest impact in my whole life. For my whole upbringing, and just being around in the wrong environment, where it was always trouble, being around in and around the wrong people, a lot of underage drinking, getting in with the wrong crowds, especially growing up in it's very different nowadays, but a scheme back then where, most people were afraid to cross certain boundaries before you end up getting into gang fights with literally your neighbours and everything else.
Yeah.
So you grow up in quite a rough and tough neighbourhood. In one way, you look back and go, well, it's given you a lot of street smarts.
Yeah.
It's made you a bit more resilient on things and given you a bit more of a drive to want to escape that and do more, and a bit more, I guess you grow up a lot quicker when you have to. But at the same time, as much as that I'm grateful for that being my experience, I never want my kids to experience that. And this is where I wrestle a little bit, because my girls are growing up with a completely different upbringing,
Mm.
you know, and it's that balance that Alexa and I are doing, in the sense of we don't want to create entitled kids,
Yeah.
because when we look around what's happening in this day and age, that's a real problem.
Yeah.
This sense of entitlement.
Mm.
And I guess it would be good to hear your thoughts on how you deal with that from a leadership point of view,
Mm.
because where I see a lot of entitlement is in our future generation,
Yeah.
in the sense of get into the workplace.
Mm.
And if you've got those leadership principles, how do you then work and transform someone to get out of that entitlement process?
Mm.
So how do you avoid it? But at the same time, someone that's in there, they don't know they're entitled.
Yeah.
You can turn around and say that to them, but it's just an analogy I like to use is hold up that mirror. But sometimes people are not willing to look in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just one of your thoughts around that whole entitlement mentality.
Yeah, I think it's a big question, because a generation who gets everything quick now has really encouraged that. So, I'm a bit older than you, so growing up, you had to wait for things longer. Maybe you didn't have to wait as long as me, but you'd be waiting longer, more than your kids do now, because everything's so instant. And so there's an expectation that if I want something, I can have it straight away. And I think as as a parent, as a leader, life really doesn't work that way. I think John Maxwell says it this way: you pay now and play later, or you play now and you'll pay later with interest. And I really like that saying, because it really helps us to put into a context the things that you're getting that cause no cost, put nothing really in you. And so if part of the journey of a parent or a leader, or whatever you want to phrase it as, is to leave a legacy or leave an inheritance. Um, Obviously, I want to leave my kids a good inheritance on a material level, but I would prefer to give them an inheritance of character and things that I know that will hold their life together. One thing I do know, that money or material things won't hold their lives together. They may benefit from all those things. So I think if you've got to find a message that helps knock that entitlement out without slapping people.
Yeah.
If you can help them to see, well, if you keep going down that road, what do you think the outcome could be with a heart or a spirit, if you like, of entitlement? And what would be the difference if you didn't have that and you worked on character and patience and appreciation and thankfulness and gratitude for the things that you get to do? What do you think that will produce 10 years from now? It's hard to talk to a young generation to look 10 years ahead. But if you bring a consistent message that these things are more valuable than you getting what you want all the time, though we want to give you some of those things as well, but this stuff is more. And this is why it's more valuable. It's not as tasty right now, but it's going to taste a lot better in 10, 15, 20 years' time. And so I would say it's got to do with a collective message that you are trying to bring on a consistent basis to help deal with that whole entitlement. Whether you're a boss with employees, you still have the opportunity to communicate the environment of your organization. And so, yes, there's reward, but the reward's based on a number of factors that produce a result that's deserving of the reward. I'm not as, maybe I'm old school, I'm not sure, but I don't believe in giving every kid a reward who runs in a running race.
Yeah.
I don't think that helps. I think every kid should be encouraged. Well done, you participated in the event. But I do think that you reward those who are excelling. And though you don't want to build a comparison in young people or in a workplace, because that leads to insecurity, you also want to bring inspiration to go, well, that's possible. And if you can find the tension between those things, I think that becomes an incredible resource of strength for people. Um, but it's not a quick fix.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that myself, and it's one of those ones I wrestle, and especially when I speak to some some of my close friends. In fact, one in particular, and I don't agree with it, but that's parenting, isn't it? It doesn't mean you have to agree with
Yeah.
everyone's method of how they are going to parent their kids.
Yeah.
Incredibly wealthy guy, and his mindset is that he will look after them, he will fund their education, but as soon as they turn 18, they're on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And in one way, I get that. I understand that. And I probed a little bit because it's like in my nature to probe and say, okay, great. And when you say fund their education, what does that look like and what is that? Well, if they want to go to university, then of course I'll cover their university payments and stuff, and then they'll decide. And but in terms of them wanting to go and do their own holidays, for them wanting to get their cars, they want to get their own house, that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. I honestly do get that. And then you look at some other people and they'll say, well, we'll not only fund their education, but we'll also give them their first car, their first house, and then it's on to them. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
there's different things
Mm-hmm.
where people have got that. You've got Peter Jones from Dragon's Den. He's got the mindset of for every pound or every £1,000 that my kid makes, I'm going to then give them £1,000 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they're rewarding them in different ways.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, the way I look at it is that you don't want to create that element of entitlement. But I think it just goes back to parenting again.
Mm-hmm.
So for me and my approach to it is that to have them understand and be grateful for the things that they have, take them to certain situations where they can see, for example, in Costa Rica, each year when we go over there, especially over Christmas, we go into a lot of the what you would call the favelas, right? Very rundown locations and areas, to support and help over there. We buy a lot of Christmas gifts. We buy lots of different things just to support and help the communities and stuff. And they go along on the journey too and go and help and bring little gifts, and they get to see it. And you can see the emotion and the gratitude. They're like, wow, we've got a very different life. We're very fortunate to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reminding them of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then still instilling work ethic. Because I don't think that, I mean, work ethic is so vitally important, whether you're going to go into the working place or not. It's just being able to know that you can get a job done. You can execute on a task, execute on a project, whatever that may be. Because, of course, my kids are going to be very fortunate in the sense of they've got a better start than I had for many others.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's trying to keep them grounded. And again, I'm not saying I've got it figured out. This is just my idea. And the reason I share that is because I think that when you develop your leadership skills,
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a better chance to be able to not only lead yourself,
Mm-hmm.
lead your kids
Yeah.
from a different approach from your typical parenting. Because I think many parents are absent, and that's by design in the sense of having to go to work and kids go to school, and the time you come home and you might only have a couple of hours and you don't really get the chance to be able to spend a lot of time with your kids.
Right.
But that's where the weekends, as an example, or what you've said, that one dedicated day a week becomes even more important
Yes.
when you don't have a lot of time throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't stress it enough. It's one of those ones when it comes to leadership, to keep that in mind. Now, I just want to just flip over a little bit, because one of the courses that you do, your leadership courses that had such a big impact, was your leadership for relationships. It was for
Mm-hmm.
marriage
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that, and oh my God, like that must have been about, I'm talking 6-7 years ago.
Mm.
And the principles from that training
Mm.
is still the principles that I operate and use to this day.
Right.
Because it's crazy to think, when you get into a relationship with someone, everyone knows the term at the beginning, it's a honeymoon period, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as time goes on, you're like, okay, we're in a relationship here,
Yeah.
right? We're actually in a relationship, and it's not straightforward, and it's not as easy as you first thought. You're trying to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
You're making a commitment to one person, which I think is incredibly important in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you still be deeply and madly in love?
Mm-hmm.
So we celebrate our 10th year anniversary this month, the month of May, and I'm still madly in love with my wife to this day.
Yeah.
And I always reflect and look back of those principles. So maybe a little touch on that a little bit when it comes to leadership. because something that I've had to wrestle with is that I need to show my emotions more.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure that Alexa's being heard.
Mm-hmm.
I need to show interest in what she wants and her desires,
Mm.
along with my own ones too, and have that, I guess, shared experiences too, that I can also lead her to want to do things too.
Mm.
So just your general chats around relationships and strengthening those.
Yeah. Well, relationships are complex, right?
Yeah.
They're not one, two, three. Again, this is where I think leadership does um, really make a big difference, because in the big picture of leadership, you would want to develop a 360 view where you look at all the angles. It's the analogy of when you throw a stone into a pond, it goes in every direction. And so in a relationship, every step you're taking is having an effect, whether that be positive or negative. So if you're only front looking, you may be missing some things that are the back of your head. So the art of looking right round as you make a decision, or even before you make the decision, can actually help us um, stop, I guess, a whole bunch of problems coming our way. Because if you're making a step without the thought of your partner making that step, for example, that's going to have a ripple effect that you might find is negative. So I think if you are thinking through the decisions that you are making in leading your partner or leading anyone really, and you take the approach that I need to understand the effect that's going to have on them if I take this step. Now, you're never going to get that fully because you're not living in someone else's shoes, but you can, from your own experience, gain a good sense of what it would be like if I have something like empathy. And I think, well, what would I feel like if I did that? It's the same with kids, right? So, what was it like as a kid when you were in that scenario and your parents made that decision? Was that positive or negative? So, you then facing the same scenario in whatever stage of life you are, now your kids are in that place or your partner's in that place. Okay, now you've got some empathy, and you could potentially make that decision better. So that's where I think building and leading together, bringing your partner with you. Again, is this all about what I want to do? Is this about what we are doing? I might be the one doing it, but are we doing it still? I think they're good questions to ask, because the moment it becomes too individual, problems are going to hit the road at some point. But if I'm more inclusive, I'm bringing my partner on this journey. And likewise, if she is wanting to go in a direction, it's not her going in that direction, it's we are going in that direction, but she's doing it.
So what do you do in a situation where you have a partner and maybe you're married, maybe you're not, but you've been with them for a number of years and things aren't the best, aren't going so well, but you want to work on it, and then you start something new. This is one of the most common things I see, because if you want to start a new business, you want to go and do whatever it may be, you want to try something new. There can be some friction, but let's take the business analogy. Let's say you're going to go and you want to go and start a new business, but you're having friction with your partner.
Right.
So your partner is like, well, I don't know if you should be doing this or what. In that type of scenario, you know that you love your partner, you still want to be with them. You also want to follow your dream. You want to try something, and you know you're doing it for the greater good. And you're getting friction when you're trying to get them to come along in the journey. Yeah. And maybe it's because of past experiences. You've tried something, it didn't work out, and you risked something and it never worked well. So imagine that kind of scenario from a leadership point of view. What would you be suggesting to that person?
Well, that is a massive question.
The reason I share that, Jason, is because I wouldn't believe how many people find that as one of their biggest challenges that hold them back from starting something new.
Yes.
Is their partners. And I understand it, because it's not that their partner doesn't want them to do it. It's just past information in the past, because you're being judged for who you are.
Yes.
It's like when I started in property in my late teens, early 20s. When I spoke to my family members, they didn't know me as a proper professional. They just knew me as their, this young lad who had a track record of starting and stopping and, try to figure things out at that age. So they had all the reason not to believe in me
Yes.
and to try and steer me away from me wanting to go out and be an entrepreneur and do all crazy stuff and everything else.
Yes.
Is that they don't mean harm. It's just that they don't know you as that person.
Yeah.
And of course, when we talk about comfort zones, the people around you, your comfort zone and their comfort zone is an extension of each other's. And when you start to do something that's different or something you've never done before, it's a bit of, oh, what's happening here? Are you going to outgrow me?
Yes.
Are you going to cause us more issues? Remember that thing that happened before? Do you see how that is a scenario that happens? And having that in mind, I guess, how would you maybe unpack that?
Yeah, it is. It's we could be here talking about that all day in itself. But a thought to look at is, and this can go right across leadership, full stop, whether you're going in another direction in your organization. If you have been thinking about a thought of doing something about your future, and you've been thinking about it for a month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe longer, maybe 12 months, but you haven't really communicated it. You've just been sitting on it, mulling over it. Maybe you've been doing some writing and putting your ideas down on paper and formalizing it, but you still haven't communicated it. And then you've worked out, yes, this is what I want to do. And then you drop it onto the person that you want to come with you and expect an immediate yes. I go, that's probably where the problem is. You, like yourself, have given yourself time to think it through. And then you've come to a conclusion, this is a good decision. Well, perhaps in the process of your thinking, you take your spouse with you.
Yeah, it makes
So it's
so
not
much sense.
such a shock when you've gone, I've been thinking about this for 6 months. We don't say that. We go, this is the idea I'm thinking about we're doing. And they're like, what? Where did this come from? It's the same with your kids. It's the same with a workplace. And if you've got a team, you're a coach, and you suddenly throw, this is what we're doing. And you're expecting people to immediately embrace it when you've been thinking about it for 2 months. And it's the terminology you got to learn to seed.
Yeah.
And seed it effectively, which simply means take people on the journey so they are able to make a full, agreeable agreement in that decision. No one wants to feel forced. We're going this way. No one wants that. So I believe good leaders take people on the journey. And that's what we were talking about earlier with your kids, with your spouse, in a work context. Take people with you so that they also can embrace it as well. So even for us coming from Sydney to Glasgow, it wasn't just going, kids, we're going. We had to work out a way that make it a win for them. We had to describe the adventure we were going to go on because they're leaving all their friends, even though they were young. They're leaving their family, their cousins. So why is this going to be so good for us? So we had to work out a few things. And so I just thought, okay, we're going to get you a dog. We're going to get you a trampoline. We're going to go to Disneyland Paris. Well, what are we doing there? We're taking them on the journey. And I think we've got to learn that art of taking people with us so they have time to process the decisions we think we want to do. And I think that's where people trip.
Yeah, look, I'm guilty of that. Just as you say that, I'm like, yeah, I can even resonate because, you always get these ideas, don't you?
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's, as you say, you've been pondering on that for weeks or months, and then it's just very sudden when you spark it on someone.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense.
And we wonder why people aren't so excited.
I know. Yeah. So I guess with relationships and what we're talking about there, that also translates into business partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those ones where I think communication is incredibly important.
Yes.
And that kind of just echoes what you're saying here.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's been just to take your viewpoint on this, sometimes people don't want to hurt other people's feelings.
Uh-huh.
So leadership in some way is being straight because you don't want to not say something because you're afraid to hurt someone's feelings.
Right.
But it's how you communicate it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's how you approach it to get the best response.
Yep.
So I guess from communication, I know my own experience, that it's probably the most important thing when it comes to leadership. I mean, there's many traits. I'm sure you'll agree to that. But when you're actually speaking to people, it's, I mean, just communication itself,
Yes.
it could solve so many problems.
Yeah. Communication, without a doubt, is right up there to being one of the most fundamental factors of life. And whether we do it well or don't do it well affects things massively. It can wreck things. It can put things back together. So learning how to communicate, things like your tone. I can say, hey, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to do this. In the tone is a softer approach or it's an aggressive approach. And in leadership, especially when a leader is highly motivated, sometimes the tone matches the passion and the receiver doesn't like it because the tone's too strong. And that's why I try and help people when it comes to things like texting or emails. You don't know the tone. You're guessing the tone. You're thinking, he sounds angry. And he may not be, but he might be. And so I always go, don't communicate through text. Bring information, but don't communicate. Communicate through words. So pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Because you don't want people interpreting you. And people say, were you angry with that? I wasn't angry at all, because they couldn't read it. So if you can master the art of not just what you say, but the way you say it, it really does eliminate a lot of issues. Listen, we're all guilty of saying something that we wish we hadn't said. It comes out of our mouth, and as it's coming out, you're going, oh no, it's gone. Can't get that one back. But you can learn and you can adapt and you can get better at it. And so communicating with business partners is a skill set. And, some do it really well, and that's why it works well. And some don't do it so well. And then sometimes those partnerships break up.
Yeah.
So if people can dedicate to learning one of the most important skill sets of life is communication, then their whole life will be affected by it. Mm-hmm. And that's what part of leadership is learning how to effectively communicate. Conflict resolutions, there are ways of doing it. I grew up in a culture, and we embraced it because that was normal. Get over it. So you go, all right, get over it. And so, but another generation doesn't like that phrase. They want more dialogue. And so sometimes you've got to adjust your own culture to win over another culture. And so though Australia and Scotland have very similar cultures in some ways, there are differences. Australians can just shoot you between the eyes with their bluntness at times. And other times they're joking and people think you're serious. And so again, they're just cultural differences. But if you want to win in life, you've got to learn to win people. And what I mean by win people is you've got to be able to connect with them. And then able to be effective in connecting with others, you've really got to learn the art of communication. So the first premise of communication, am I interested in you? Because if I'm not interested in you, it doesn't matter how cleverly I say things, it's not going to get a connection point. But if I genuinely I've got your best interest at heart, I want you to win in this moment, then you're going to find you're going to get a language and you're going to get a tone that helps the other person. But if it's all about what I want to do, where I want to go, and I don't really care whether you come or don't come, then the tone's going to be there. And you'll get some people that run with you because they're still getting something from you. But there'll come a day when they go, see you later, alligator.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that I spot a mile away with people who have their own business and they've got their own staff members, is that they're getting in there and they're like the general, just throwing commands everywhere, directions, telling them what to do, got no care in the individuals themselves.
Yeah.
It's all selfish ambition. We're doing this, we're doing that. Go and do this, go and that. It's like a,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like a regimented, army patrol,
Uh-huh.
and that's the exact opposite of leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that no someone might respond to that because they feel like they have to because it's their job or whatever, but
Yeah.
you're absolutely not getting the best out of them.
Yeah, and most people who are like that get away with it for a time
Mm-hmm.
because they're throwing money at it, and people want that money. But I'd encourage people to have a go at leading in a voluntary organisation because you got no weapon of monetizing that, and people don't have to do it. So you have to learn how to become effective, because people got to be believe in a cause, or believe in a purpose, or believe in doing a local cleanup in the community. Well, why are they going to get out of bed on a Saturday morning to clean other people's rubbish up for? Well, if you lead well and you're able to communicate well, then you'll find people will actually go, yeah, I can see why that's a good idea. So all the sort of mannerisms that we can get away with monetizing thing only last for a period of time. But if you can learn the art of leadership in communicating so they believe in what you're doing, then the money is a bonus to work with as opposed to the front runner of what you're trying to build. Because if you can build longevity, not everyone's going to stay a long time with you, right? Even if you do it really well. But if you can build a longevity into what you're trying to lead, then people will see you through the ups and the downs of the seasons of life.
Mm.
And so, yeah, learning that side of things is hugely important.
Yeah. I'd love to touch on decision making because I guess we need to make decisions on a daily basis in all areas of our life. But in some ways, especially from many people in business, is that, and it doesn't have to be in a business context, it can be in anything. Sometimes we are not confident enough in ourselves to make a decision, whether it's a yes or no or something definite. And then sometimes it leads to paralysis. Sometimes it leads to the idea of, fearing the worst case scenario and something not going right. And then we just remain within our comfort zone and we don't take that next step forward. Or just indecisiveness. So maybe from a leadership point of view, I'll give you a perfect example, right? Because it's a bit of a something that just happened recently. So we were in Dubai, and one of my friends over there, he says, "Paul, do you want to come and race Formula 3 cars?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
So we went along, and it was a 90-minute brief where they're talking about everything that could go wrong. If you understeer, this could happen. If you oversteer, you could spin out here. When you're going around the track, you want to stay in the racing line because if you veer off only a little bit, you'll hit sand and you could spin. When you're going up the clutch, you need to put it in firm, watch your feet because your pedal, like 90 minutes of all the things that could happen. So there's 6 of us just about to go out. No overtakings allowed. You're going to be behind a pace car. And I was a bit nervous.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I'm a good driver, right? And I'm a bit nervous of things. I'm like, oh my God, it's quite scary. These cars can go, and it's, and the whole brief and all the things could happen, and what happens if you crash here, if you spin into this, and all that's going through your head. And then you sit in the car, you get strapped up, you're literally lying on the floor, you're trying to get your feet beside the pedals, and you're like, oh my God, you're testing it. And then the car starts, and I stall it 3 times before I get out in the paddock. So all of this is going on. But before we actually go out, one of the pace car drivers comes up and he says, on the instructors, he says, okay, so who, this is how he started it. So who's confident? I mean, what a question to ask, because none of us were confident. So we're all just looking, and we're looking at each other, waiting for someone to go. Then he goes, well, who's done go-karting before? And I was like, yeah, there's a couple of us. Went, okay, great. Who thinks they're going to be the most confident and really go for it? And the two of us are looking at each other like what do we? So me being me, thinking, okay, he's not going to. I need to step up. And I'm like, okay, I'll go for it. I'll lead. And I felt that I had to make a decision because no one else was, and it was going to be a bit of an awkward scenario. And this is a bit of tongue in cheek, right? Because this is just going having a bit of fun and everything else. And what's interesting about that is that the first few laps, I was not confident at all. I was trying to figure out the clutch control and changing the gears, and the cars come up quite quick behind you, and you're kind of worried they're going. Like it was a bit of a like the first 5 minutes, it wasn't enjoyable, believe it or not. And then about halfway through, I get pulled in, and then they brought another pace car out, and I acknowledged. I says, "Is it my confidence? I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, stay behind the pace car. Just get behind them. We'll build up your confidence." And then begin going behind the pace car for the rest of the race, it built my confidence so much. But the point here when it comes to that is I felt forced into just making a decision, and I sensed it around me because no one else. But that's the same analogy that I see with business partners all the time, or teams where there's a lot of indecisiveness and no one can make a decision and no one can lead. Now, of course, I could have said nothing and let him decide what he's going to do. And I felt because no one else is, I better step up, even when I never felt I was ready. So I guess for me, it was one of those ones where, well, step up. I don't think you're ever going to be ready for things. You just need to have that little belief in yourself that will figure out and work out all good at the end. But just when it comes to decision making in yourself, based on what I've been saying there, what's your thoughts on people who are wrestling with making decisions?
Well, it's a confidence issue.
Yeah.
Bottom line. And there's confidence to go, yes, I'm going to do it. And there's confidence to go, no, I'm not going to do it. And if you can have the two in you, then you're going to win. Because sometimes you need to say no. Because you don't have enough knowledge. You don't have enough skill set. You don't have enough resource. You don't have enough around you. So some people can bat through those. We came to Scotland with that. Didn't know enough. Didn't have a big enough team. Didn't have the resource. But our belief overcame that. I wouldn't recommend you do life that way. I go, most times you want to get as much knowledge as you can. And so you got to know your skill. You got to know your direction. Don't say knowledge is bliss. Lack of knowledge is bliss. No. Knowledge brings light to a context. And I always encourage people. What the reason they're fearful about a thing is because they don't have knowledge on it. So how you overcome most problems, which is making you fearful, you go get knowledge. There's a book. There's a podcast. There's a person who's done it before you. Go find out. Get some knowledge. But then you got to get some understanding, which is a deeper level. Then you got to get some wisdom. And how do you get all that? I would say in decision making, if you're in the wrestle, it depends how long you've been in the wrestle for. If it's just started, well, you can sit a bit longer. If it's a life and death situation, then, hey, you've got to make an immediate decision. And they're not easy. Most times in life, it's not that. Sometimes people come to you with this is the only opportunity you're ever going to have. I've learned, I've been around for a while now. There's always a carpet sale. Doesn't matter. This is the only carpet sale it's going to be. No, there'll be another carpet sale next week. So it's not your only opportunity, but sometimes that is the opportunity you need to take. And that wave is not going to come again for a while. And if you miss those opportunities, they can set you back quite a long period. Doesn't mean another wave won't come, but you don't know when that wave's going to come. So when they line up for you, and you need to be prepared to take that wave. There's no point catching a wave where you're going to get smashed unless you're just learning. There's one wave after the other. You go back out, you're learning, boom. But when your opportunity comes, it's going to be based on how well you are prepared. And so if I'm not prepared for a thing, so even with your story of in Dubai, if you didn't have the guys in front of you who really know what they're doing, and you just went, yeah, I'll lead, you probably would have ended up in a wall, more than likely. but you had the guidance. You had someone who actually knows what they're doing. And I go, that's a big part of life. Who has gone before you? Who's already doing it? And what can you learn from them until you can take the training wheels off? And so there is, even in decision making, you can still have your training wheels on.
Mm.
And the training wheels are, whether it be a coach or whether it be a mentor, whether it be someone you're looking at from a distance of how they did it. I think you can make really great decisions, even with a lack of experience, if you've got your training wheels on. I wouldn't attempt things if I've never done it before and I have no knowledge on it. You're going to make some major mistakes.
Yeah.
Life is too valuable to lick the finger and hope for the best. So most people's problems exist because they lack knowledge.
So when we look at decision making, and we've kind of, I guess the process here is confidence, right?
Yes.
So with confidence, we need to get more knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
a better understanding. So if confidence is not a skill set that you're just born with or just given, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that needs to be developed and built.
Yes.
So let's say someone's in a scenario where they have the knowledge. If anything, it's the whole engineer's mindset. And that was me for such a long time until I had to break out of that. The engineer's mindset being, I want to see how everything works before I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see every permutation that could possibly happen.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see this scenario and that scenario. And before you know it, you spend so many hours, so many days, so many weeks
Mm-hmm.
over analyzing and you've got an abundance of knowledge. In fact, you consume every bit of knowledge you could possibly imagine,
Mm-hmm.
but you haven't taken that step.
Mm-hmm.
Something's holding you back.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that is confidence, isn't it?
That's right.
So how would someone then develop their confidence? Because unless you tell me otherwise, the very thing that you want to become confident in, you kind of need to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's no avoiding it
That's right.
in order to become confident.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you suggest someone that's maybe going through that process and how they would then develop their confidence?
Yeah, again, great question, because knowledge is the first base. The second base is practice. And third base is performance. So I'm never going to know the fullness of confidence unless all three are operating. And you've got to give yourself enough. Again, it depends on how you live life, right? If you have grace on yourself to allow yourself to make some mistakes, then you're going to go for things. If you have a mentality that every time you make a mistake, you're going to beat yourself up, it's going to put a real harness on you. So I want to have, even with family life, I want a grace environment in my family. You can make a mistake. It's okay. Rather see you have a go, make a mistake, than do nothing. But you don't want to overstep that where you make a mistake that destroys. And so that's where knowledge comes in and wisdom comes in. So everyone's step, if you make a decision to step down on a path, even if you've done all your homework, like you said, and you need to do as much as you can, you also go with the fact there's a lot of things you currently don't know. So go with what you do know. So that'll take me down the first 10 meters of this corridor was what I know. What I don't know is beyond the 10 meters. But that's the adventure. And if you have the spirit and the courage of, I'm going to take an adventure here. I'm going to get 10 meters with what I know, with the awareness. After that, I'm not sure how it works. But as I get to 9 meters, it'll start to appear. And I'll get some more knowledge. And then I'll get some more knowledge. And then I'll get some more knowledge. And I'll take more steps as I go. So I always encourage people, you don't have to have the whole, 50-year vision. And okay, great, have a 50-year vision. But there's a lot of things you don't know. So you start out on the journey and then life hits you, or doors were there that you never knew were even there. And all of a sudden you're in a new direction of life because you saw another door. But that's the excitement and the approach to life of having a go. But don't have a go blindly. You got to do some homework. I mean, there's too many stories on the planet where people, did a wrong investment. They didn't have enough knowledge on it and they just licked the finger and hoped for the best and got led astray. So you've got to do your homework, but you can't sit on your backside hoping one day it's all going to come towards you, because it never does.
Mm.
And so the tension of having enough with a step,
Yeah.
I think is hugely important. And I would rather have a go and it not work. People say, what if it doesn't work if you come to Glasgow? It's a real question, right? What if it doesn't work? There's a possibility. Nothing's guaranteed. I believe it's going to work. But you go, well, I'd rather have a go. And well, at least I had a try. And I says to my kids again, well, Dad had a go, even if it didn't work. He wasn't frightened of that. Now, the fear still was real, and all the battles that you are internally working through are still real. But then you find as you step, well, actually, this is working. I actually can do this. Public speaking, for example, for me, was my number one fear. People don't believe that when I say that now because I do so much of it. But it really was. I mean, I hated saying speeches at my own birthday party. And that was the part of the day I hated because my whole family would say speech at the blowing of the candle, And I've always felt like I never said anything really well. And then found there was something in me that was my future. And I tell you, the first time I did a public speak in a big setting, I was being sick in the toilets, and I was only doing 5 minutes. So I encourage people. Sometimes you just got to do life with knocking of the knees, and because there is no everything's green lights right now, and you can see everything, but you do need to see some things. So I'd encourage anyone in decision processing and activating their confidence. Your confidence is really only going to be activated as you take the steps.
Mm.
But you can't be blind and just hope it works. There's got to be a level of certainty to at least get you to first base. That's what I would encourage people with.
Yeah. Now, I don't know the answer to, I guess this is a personal question for myself, which I think is very relevant, is that I work with a lot of people, especially those that I am fortunate. I say fortunate because for me, I'm fortunate that I'm able to have an impact on someone's life. If they take the information they learn from me, it could be a huge difference in what it does for them and the knock-on effect to their families and everyone else as well. So I see that as that I'm fortunate to be able to impact other people. And sometimes, that whole saying is that sometimes you want it more for them than they want it for themselves.
Yes.
So I find myself wrestling in some situations where I'm maybe working with someone and I'm holding up the mirror and I'm like, come on, I know you're capable of so much more. This is the steps that you need to do.
Yeah.
But other things get in the way. And then, of course, I'm going to say, well, you're not making it a priority. But is it comfort? Is it people say they want something? Because when I reflect on myself, I look at it and go, I needed to change my circumstance and situation because most people, they are trying to avoid pain. And sometimes you need to go through pain in order to take action to change.
Yeah.
There's only a small percentage of people who go after the pleasure of something. Like, I want to do that because it's going to give me this outcome. Most people are fueled by avoidance of pain. So when people maybe find themselves in an element of comfort, which I found myself in times of my life, and I guess for me, it's either something painful has to happen for you to change, or you have a desire for something that much so you become obsessed with it and you move towards. But common things I hear with people who find themselves in what I would say call limbo, where they've got comfort, maybe they've settled, they want more, they understand it, they'll acknowledge it, they'll say it, but their actions keep them where they're at, and they don't have big changes in their life. And then what happens, because people don't want to turn around and say they failed at something, they come up with every justifiable reason as to why they didn't take action or why they didn't get there.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because for the best part of the people I work with, they want to become high performers. They want to be able to lead. But what is that's happening that's got them stuck? Where I can help them excel in what you see with the people you work with to help them excel in that situation?
Yeah. I would say to answer that is to go, people lack vision.
Mm.
It really boils down to that. And the power of having a vision is life changing, because people say you need more discipline. I go, you don't. You need more vision, because your vision automatically brings discipline. And so that's why people, they have goals, which is different to vision. I've got a goal to get fit, and then pain kicks in. And I don't want that pain, I'd rather, just have it easier and not be as healthy as I could be, because it's not really a vision, it's just a goal. Now, within vision, you need goals. But I do believe that if we can help people formalize a personal vision and it's strong enough, you'll climb over pain. And people call it the why. You got to have a deep why, which is 100% true. But what is the why? Why is it's the vision. What do you see? And what do you like? What do you want your life to become? And if that's quite weak, um, then the fulfillment of that vision really rarely materializes. And every vision because we deal with people all the time, every vision hits a storm. Every vision. So you can tell whether it's a vision or a fantasy after the storm. So when your vision got wiped and got flattened, if you're going, good to go, let's go again, it's a genuine vision. If it's like, oh, I'm not doing that again, well, it's probably just a fantasy that you were hoping nothing was going to go wrong. And so if we can help stir people to discover the potential of what is really in them, and they can formalize that into a proper vision and be able to write that down, that really becomes the overcoming power in life. So I don't believe you should have more than one vision, because the word division is division, which means two visions, which is what happens in family and work. They have a vision for their family and they have a vision for their work, which creates two visions. So sooner or later, you're going to have division operating. So I go to you, got to find this one thing that makes your life, this is what life is all about, that then encompasses all things. So if I can help people to find the one thing in life that you do that's big enough for your family, for your future, for your faith, for your fitness, for your finances, then it all begins to work. The jack of all trades, master of none is the old saying. I don't do more than one thing. Anything I do has to come off the same trunk. So I can have other branches, but as long as it's on the same trunk, I can't create another tree. Otherwise, I'm living off two trees. And ultimately, I go out of what I would call your grace zone, or your rhythm zone, or your sweet spot. So helping people to go with their vision helps them to get to a place where they go, well, actually, that's what I really want. You could call it the must, or what you term the need. I've got to get out of this. Well, what was the motivating factor of that? Probably is what you saw was possible. The pain was real, but then I have to see something of where I'm going to. So I think that plays a massive part when it comes to overcoming pain, because your pain level is really your level. You won't go past your pain level. So the only way you increase your pain level is if your vision's stronger than your current pain level. And if it is, you'll bust through the barriers. I knew that as a sports person. As I'm training and you're pushing your body to the utmost levels where you're vomiting or whatever. Don't want to get too graphic on it, but you're going back. Well, what do I see? Why am I doing this? And it pushes you over those barriers, because that's far bigger than your current pain. And so that's developable, and it takes time to get there. You don't get a vision quickly, but you can create one. You can get taught some skill set on that, and then once that's formalized, then yeah, it'll get tested. Things will whack it, and if it's still there, it's genuine.
Yeah.
Mm,
No, that's great. I mean, it's so profound when you think about it,
mm,
but it's one of the biggest challenges that people have is
mm,
clarifying their vision
mm,
in the sense of a lot of people, and I've been there myself, is that we are just so caught up in the now and everything that's going on,
mm,
juggling family, a business, or work, and
mm,
multiple different things happening, and
mm,
it's like, yeah, I'll get to my vision later. I just need to deal with this noise and everything
mm,
else, or the vision's just not clear.
mm,
And I guess that's a big part of what we've put together here with the 1 day leadership coaching and
mm,
training that you have designed, and it's on the back of what you've got in your own experience of helping people identify and get clear on their vision,
mm,
help them get those roadblocks,
mm.
how to overcome those, how to make better decisions, but more importantly, the whole process of leading themselves to then be able to lead
That's right.
others.
That's right.
So maybe tell us a little bit more about that, because there's a number of dates up and coming. I'm going to
Yeah.
link off in the show notes to the website and
Yeah.
stuff where people can go and find out more, because I know for myself, you've had such a profound impact in my life that's had a knock-on effect in all areas of my life.
Mm,
And I can't stress enough how when someone embarks on this whole personal development growth to be the best version of themselves, to be prepared to lead
mm,
and believe that you're capable, and you go through the process, what it can do to
mm,
someone's life, it's been so profound for me.
mm.
So maybe let's touch on what you've put together and what
Yeah.
people can get the benefit from.
Look, I think there's a lot of benefits of dedicating some time to find out what's in you, your capabilities, your abilities, your talents, your giftings, and have them engage with a real purpose or finding that one thing. And so, over a whole day, we're going to be looking at what you just mentioned. Some of your mindsets that we all have. Nobody's perfect, but we're going to challenge some of those. Why do you think that way? And is that thinking actually helping you? We're going to look at some of your barriers, your ceilings, as to why you can't get through some things. We're going to have a look at, some holistic life. How do you run life holistically? And we're going to touch on how to formulate a vision, and so that at least by the end of a day, you're going to leave with some tools of how to move your life forward. You're going to leave with a sense of I've got potential to really do something with my life. So all these things will be unpacked over 4 or 5 hours. We're going to do some workshops in it, give you some time to think about it, challenge yourself. So I would say if you want to really move forward and you want to find out that there is more in you, a day like this will be hugely beneficial. And so I love them because I learn from them when I do these things as well. I love talking with people, and so I've always got my L plates on. I'm always trying to learn from other people as well. But I have learned some things that absolutely do work. And once you discover some of these principles, or you call them laws, call them whatever you like, they actually do guarantee a level of success as you apply them to your life. It's a little bit like a fish in water. You'll find that if the fish comes out of water, it ain't going to survive any longer, but it flourishes in water. So we're going to aim at helping you discover what is inside you, and then you focusing on that to become all that you could possibly become.
Outstanding. Amazing. Love it. So I'm going to link off to the website for people who are interested. You should go and check it out. It's lifemasterymentor.com. So go and check that out. I'll also link off to the actual link itself so you can go and check it. And of course, you should be connecting with Jason as well. I'll put his social handles in here too. Jason, this has been an absolute pleasure. Always enjoy having
Love having
conversations with
time with
you.
you, Paul.
And I'm sure that people will get such a lot from this session alone. And of course, if that stirred something inside you and you want to look at that next level of leadership in yourself as well as being able to lead others, then of course you want to go head over, check that out, and come and join Jason and spend a day with him to dig deeper into all of these things. It's going to take your life to that next level. It has done for me, and I can't thank you enough for that, Jason.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Paul. and always love having a chat with you.
Brilliant. Good stuff. So all the best, and I'll catch up with you soon, Jason. Thanks again.